Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Excuse me. I'm just gonna adjust it there. Thank you. A little tall. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you all for having me today. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the invitation. Marlena asked me to speak about, can you hear me? Okay. All right, great. I have 3 kids, so hopefully I'm used to being kidding. Marlena asked me to speak about the state of libraries, and I have 30 minutes to do that in. So that's impossible because, as you know, libraries are doing so much now, more than ever. But I'm going to try my level best to cover a couple of topics here. Marlena, am I not in the right place?
Have I not turned it on for you? That's a possibility.
Okay. I can just tell you. Oh, okay. Yes. All right. Sort of. Let's see. We're just gonna get everything up at once. All right. So a year in review and what's next. Book banning. You all have probably heard about that. I would imagine that's definitely on topic. Boards. I want to talk about pivoting. I'm actually going to spend a good bit of my time talking about pivoting today. And funding, and then what's coming, what's next. All right, inside, just quick refresh of who we are, right? So there are 5.2 million people in South Carolina. There are 2.8 million library card holders here in South Carolina. There are 205 public library locations with about 4 new ones in construction right now and about 46 more needed. Libby, you want to come out of retirement? Need you desperately. And last year they were open over 500,000 hours. That's significant. Yeah, wow. I mean, that really is quite significant. You may know there are over 10,000 friends of the library members, so you are 10,000 strong. Any guess of how many professional librarians there are in South Carolina in public libraries?
2,000.
2,000. I saw Mary just say 500. Anybody else? Less than 1,000. So they need you, definitely. You outnumber them significantly, and so they need your support, and they need your advocacy. What happened last year, library usage? So there were 10.5 million, it's actually a little over 2.5 million, visits to South Carolina libraries. Those are physical, in-person visits, not virtual visits. 2.5 million wireless sessions used. There are 20 million website visits to public libraries for 46 counties. Just let that sink in for a second. 20 million website visits for 46 county libraries. The library, it's always hilarious to me when somebody's like, nobody uses the library. I'm like, really? Because strangely, our statistics are completely different than that. And you all already know that. There were 29.4 million usages of the collection. So if we go back to my previous slide with the 5 million people, 29.4 million collection usage. Of that, I'm curious to know how many you're surprised at the next bullet. 6 million were juveniles. That's more than the people of South Carolina, which we're going to talk about in a second, a little bit more. 7.5 million were adults. There were 13.5 million items that were books. So it's people still hold books in their hands and read them. We know that. And some of those are juveniles. A significant portion of them, in fact. There were also 2.4 million ebooks borrowed. I love these pictures. These are real pictures from a real library. The Tai Chi is in Abbeville County. This is stuff that's happening at public libraries. And actually the one on the bottom is Abbeville County Library also, and it is a baby shower that they had for their community, a community baby shower. This was just, actually a couple weeks ago. Alright, so book banning, because Marlene asked me to talk about libraries, and I saw this as a topic of discussion in a couple of other places in friends groups, so why, what, where, how, etc. Why? Depends on who you ask, what the reason is. I would say the majority in this room would probably answer censorship. That's a typical library sort of response. What? They're mostly LGBTQ books that are LGBTQ plus books, and some books that are African American focused, but primarily they're LGBTQ plus books that have been banned. Where it's mostly in the upstate, and this is one of those topics that we should be paying attention to. It is very important. We believe in the freedom to read at the South Carolina State Library, and I hope that you all do as well. But it's also a topic that gets a lot of news play because there are some very loud voices. I say that to say it's very important. You should be engaged in it. It is not happening as much. The challenges that we're receiving, rather, are not happening as much as you would think that they were. Last year, there were, other than the upstate, let's just put the upstate's in some sort of category right now because they have some political things happening there. But if we remove 3 or 4 counties in the upstate, it's less than 20 in the rest of the state where books have been challenged. Now, across the United States, there are book challenges, of course, as well. The Missouri State Library just lost their funding because of some book challenges. They've gotten it back, so that was good. Yes, I know. The good news is they did get it back. They got it back last week. They lost it probably not very long. I mean, it was just a couple weeks, but we're going to see that happening more. Texas has a lot of legislation right now that's been written against books, and more about funding and holding funding instead. Some of it's tied to education as well. Like it's interesting how legislation will be written. I don't know if many of you followed that or not, but Oklahoma has had some book challenges. How are books challenged? Any ideas? I have terrible allergies. Excuse me. I will probably be drinking a lot of water. Every public library in South Carolina has a reconsideration request form. I know that because we made sure that they did have. They also have a reconsideration request policy. So anybody in the community can write a request for reconsideration of a material. That's how. Some of the publicity that's happened around banned books has been inaccurate and quite honestly fraudulently set up, in that this is a book that's made a lot of headlines. It's called Genderqueer. This is not a book that you would find in your children's section. This is going to be in a teen section or young adult or something to that, or even adult in some libraries. What's happened though is that someone will find it in the library and then they will go move it and put it next to the board books. It's not with the board books. We already know that. So this is information literacy that I'm talking about here. Remember, when you're reading something, when you're hearing something, dig deeper and find out what's the real story behind it, which is part of your advocacy work. All right, a balanced collection. I'm going to talk about pivoting in just a second, but a balanced collection. It's important for the library to have a balanced collection because the library is for everyone. That's my last point here on this slide. The library is for everyone. That means the conservatives that are in your area. That means the liberals that are in your areas. That means people who are gay. That means people who are straight. That means people who are black, people who are white, people who are Hispanic, people who are. The library is for everyone, and the library should be a welcome space for everyone. You should be able to go to the library and see books that are representative of you and your life experiences. We're all uniquely different, thankfully. Now, this is a tricky subject, and so that's why I'm spending a bulk of my time on it, because I know it's a tricky subject. But what I've talked about with public libraries is pivoting. We know that the library does a lot more than have books that people fight over. And people have been fighting over books since there have been books. It's nothing new. This is just the way of the world. This is the way of libraries. It's just a different mechanism that is used to communicate about how we fight about books. We've always fought about books. That's just the way it is. But libraries are for everyone. So pivoting, what else does the library do? And these are hopefully skills I'm giving to you too, so that you can feel comfortable in your community talking when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I know you serve on the Friends board and you guys aren't gonna fund any of those books, right? Like, you're not gonna let the library spend any of your money on books that are inappropriate books that are sexualizing children or whatever it is. I want you to be able to pivot out from that conversation and to be educated in that conversation. What else is the library doing? The library is a space for telehealth. That's a major issue in South Carolina, because we have so many rural communities. It's very hard for those communities to draw doctors and nurses. So libraries are doing a lot more with telehealth. Congressman Clyburn in particular has been focused on that as part of his, for the last couple of years, and with the broadband initiatives that he has in place. Every public library in South Carolina has a South Carolina history room. Y'all knew that, right? Every public library in South Carolina has South Carolina history room. And they're all so cool. They're all uniquely different because it is history about that community. And you probably know this too, but South Carolina's history is so rich from a genealogical perspective that we have people contact us at the state library, and I know even our smallest rural libraries, Union County, one of those have people contact them from all over the world to trace their ancestors because of the battles that were fought here in South Carolina from the very beginning of the United States. South Carolina history. When I go to the State House, I talk about South Carolina history, especially when it's a really tough political climate. My strategy is, I'm very upfront about it, my strategy is to talk about things that people can agree on, because the library's for everyone, so we know we're all not gonna agree on the books because we've been fighting about books forever. So let's talk about things that I can get some buy-in on. I often talk about South Carolina history. My whole presentation this session was on South Carolina history. And Kitty mentioned the funding that we've been able to get for public libraries. I really am sorry, please do bear with me, but if I don't keep drinking, I'll end up not being able to speak. I started in 2007 at the State Library, and the recession hit right after that. We were able to get, state aid was at $2 per capita when I started in 2007 with a $15,000 minimum. In the recession, it went down to 72 cents per capita. So we went from about 15 libraries at a minimum of 15,000 to 30 because of the recession. We've been slowly building that back. I've written some provisos. I wrote a proviso from 15,000 to get the minimum to 45,000. We got that passed. 45,000 to 60,000. 60,000 to 75,000. Now we're at 150,000. That's pretty good. And we're back up now to 225. We're at 225 now per capita. So I try to find ways to build consensus when I go to the State House. So that's what I'm talking about pivoting today. South Carolina history. Those are things that everybody can agree on. The library has valuable information, and each of your libraries has something different than your neighbor's library. They just do. They're amazing. I just love libraries, obviously. They also focus on workforce development. Training, a lot of training takes place in the library on a variety of skills. I've seen computer skills back in 2009 during the recession. Today we're doing kits on how to build robotics. I mean, there's so many things happening at the library, so many trainings that are happening at the libraries. We've got libraries who partner with their community colleges to get business, economic development business to their community. They're partnering with community colleges to get their workforce skills up in their area. We've obviously got children's programming. We'll always have children's programming. We have some libraries who are doing English as a second language. We have a lot of team engagement, enrichment. I talked about the robotics. We have NASA kits. I mean, we have, at the state library, we have 96 kits that we loan out to public libraries, because we know that public libraries can't afford all of the diversity that is required now of them. That it's just expensive. And so at the state library, we buy those things and then we loan them out to the public library. So many things are happening at the public library, as I wrote my last bullet, and on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Now, hopefully this is giving you some thoughts about how do you pivot out of a difficult conversation if you find yourself in one where somebody wants to talk to you about this book, and maybe you don't even like this book. It's okay. You don't have to like every book that's in the library. I don't like every book that's in the library. That's just, the library's for everyone. We're all different. You also might not like this book, but is kind of a counter to genderqueer, if you will. It's called Irreversible Damage, and it's about a transgender craze. I'll just tell you what it says: transgender craze seducing our daughters. And my recommendation has been to public libraries also. You should have, if you're gonna have this book in your library, you should have this book in your library. This is a balanced collection. The library's for everyone. These books are for somebody in your community. Know what else your library does, and be able to, when somebody gets you in a conversation, say, that's interesting. We have a reconsideration request form. If you want to challenge a book, let me tell you what else the library's doing. We've got this really cool history room. We're doing this new teen program. We've got this workforce development. We're building gardens, et cetera, et cetera. I'm gonna go back one. You see my slide here. This is Let Your Garden Grow. This, I think, is happening in, I think this was in Berkeley. This bottom book is a book from my collection. It's the Niagara Falls, and it's a manuscript, a sample of a South Carolina rich piece. These are the issues that are facing. Did I go back too far? Let's see. No, sorry. These are the issues that are facing public libraries. Book bans, which I've talked about plenty. Legislative changes. The legislative session really starts in October, and it goes through like May. It doesn't officially start until January. Really, they just take the summer off, basically. That's it. This year, there were several provisos written that would have had an impact on public libraries that were either stopped before anybody knew about them, which happens, and that's the best time when somebody is able to, if someone calls me and says, hey, this might be making its way up, and then we can sort of talk to the representatives who are involved in that. That's the best time that when it happens that way. But this year we did have a couple of other legislative changes that made their way through the process, but didn't end up getting put in to impact libraries. So that's great when that happens that way. But it doesn't always happen that way. We have to be on track all of the time and paying attention constantly to what's happening legislatively. The loss or lack of budget. This is an issue, I'll tell you more, almost as much, I won't say more, almost as much as it was in 2009 during the recession. And part of that has to do with some legislative changes that were made that allow counties to specifically dedicate money to libraries. So I could go down a big rabbit hole. I only have a certain amount of time, so I'm going to stop myself from doing that. But loss of funding or lack of funding, and oftentimes it's not because the community doesn't support the library, it's just that the county isn't receiving as much money. Staffing. This is a crisis situation, in my opinion. I was talking to a public library director just yesterday, and she was apologizing for missing a deadline and said, I'm so sorry, I'm just really, really understaffed, and I've made some hiring decisions that haven't worked out, but also the county is understaffed, and she needed information from the county. This is a real crisis. So I ask you all, please, if you love libraries like I know that you do, help me get people to work at the library. Please help me get people interested in librarianship. You can have a varied interest and work at the library. If you like finance, they need somebody who does finance. If you like to, any number of things. If you're in HR, they need somebody who does that. If you want to tell stories to children, so many things that you can do at the library. Help us get staffing at the library. Also, help get funding for the staffing. Space is such a big issue right now. This building is beautiful. I remember when Mary Jo and I talked about this building and what the plans were, or what it could be. I've been up to the very top of this building in the rafters practically, where you had to really be mindful to where you stepped so you didn't fall through, which thank you, I appreciate that. I always love it when library directors let me go wherever I want, and it's usually to places like that. So I'm excited about the tour today. It's such a beautiful space. But there are challenges in this building too. Mary Jo can tell you about the challenges. This was an old school, and so it's hard to get internet access that's not blocked by some of the walls. It's hard from an accessibility standpoint. It's hard from a sight standpoint, being able to see where the children are, where the teens are, where anybody is in the library. There are a lot of challenges that exist in space in public libraries. Even when you come to a space like this, and it's a nice sized space, and you think, oh, they've got plenty of space. There are challenges that they're working through though. And some of those challenges have to do with the fact that libraries are doing so much more now than they ever have. I talked about telehealth. Telehealth is, you have to have a private room if you're going to do telehealth. Nobody wants to talk to their doctor at the public computer system and talk about what's going on with them. So you have to have a private space for that. People trust their libraries. They know they can get online at their library. They know they have stable internet connection. We've made sure of that at the state library. We've spent 4 or 5 years making sure of that, and we're still working on that. People know that they can use their libraries, but libraries may not have the space to be able to address all of the concerns of the citizens. So space is a major issue right now too. And then outdated infrastructure and broadband. How many of you follow the broadband topic? Some of you, kind of, okay. Follow the broadband topic. There's $46 billion that could be coming to South Carolina from the federal government for broadband infrastructure. This is the first pot of money since the 80s. Libby can tell us exactly where some of that money can be used for construction of libraries. Not since LSCA, not since the Library Services Construction Act, have we been able to use funding for actual building of libraries. This money, which is tied to broadband, is the first pot of money that we'll be able to use that can be used to build actual libraries in communities. Can be used for renovation of libraries in communities. Can be used for a number of things related to broadband. Our libraries are desperately in need of internet access and broadband upgrades. But I'm going to try to make this really simple. This is another rabbit hole I could go down. I've spent so much time on broadband. I'm on a broadband committee for the state, and I spent a lot of time on broadband nationally and with our state, making sure that our state will get the money and making sure that libraries stay in the legislation federally. That's been an ongoing part of what I've been working on for the last couple of years. But those funds are so needed in our libraries because at the state library, as I alluded to, we've made sure that all public libraries have what they need to have to handle 100 megabytes per second. We had some libraries in South Carolina that had 10 megabytes per second right before the pandemic in 2020. We were doing our last 3 libraries. That's equivalent to dial-up. Yeah, dial-up at your public library. So these funds, we've done what we can to make, we've got all that changed. We've done Wi-Fi extenders so that Wi-Fi can go out into the parking lot so that kids who are coming to do their homework after the library's closed, or people are looking for jobs or applying for benefits or any number of things, they can do that even when the library's not open. We've done the best we can, but you don't have to know anything about technology to understand these numbers I'm getting ready to tell you. 10 megabytes is like dial-up. 100 megabytes is like your Netflix. The goal is to get to a gig for the library. That's just like unbelievable if we can get to a gig. But this money, if we get this money, we should be able to get to that for all of our public libraries in South Carolina and build space for them to be able to handle all the different things that they're doing now at the public library. Did you know that you can borrow a pressure washer from the public library? Some public libraries? Yes, I know, right? Isn't that curious? You can go use a saw in the Richland County Library and do some woodworking.
Do these come equipped with operators?
They don't. You still have to do the work. But you can go record a music video in some of our libraries. You can go practice for your job, for a job interview. You can get job interview coaching. You can, we have several of our libraries where social workers will meet with people that they're working with. People from DSS will meet with families they're working with. I mean, I could go on. I'm sorry, Marlene. You may have to get a cane and pull me off the stage.
This is fascinating.
Thank you. I could talk. Libraries are doing so much; it's impossible to put it all into just a short presentation. But what are the issues facing your library? Know that so that you can talk about those in your community. I know that y'all care about your library, or you wouldn't give of your time so freely. Thank you for doing that. But know what's happening and what your library needs. Let's see. This is a picture I was trying to get to. I thought I missed, unfortunately. But I did it. Yay. Did y'all see what this is?
Baby
Can you see this? Baby chicks. Baby chicks at the library with some little children. This could qualify as a STEM activity. It's science. I want to leave this up so you can see their faces. If you could just see this little girl's eyes, they're like the size of saucers. They're so great. This is education. This is education happening at the library. This is a children's program. This is in Orangeburg, I believe. I think it's in Orangeburg. I should have made myself a note about that. What's the role of the Friends? To support collection decisions. When somebody talks to you about a book, say, you know what, the library has a reconsideration request form. The library director is a professional. They have a higher education degree. They have a master's degree. 2 more years they could have been an attorney. Or another year, I think actually is what it is. Another year. The librarians are professionals. You have to be a professional to be a librarian in South Carolina. Know that the library appreciates the money that you raise so much. It does not give you the decision-making ability over the collection development. That's been kind of an issue that's come up in the last couple of years. It's the library director's decision as to what books are going to be purchased. And that's why you hire a professional, so that they curate a balanced collection that's for everyone. Engage with your library directors, engage with the boards, know the people who are on the boards, use the library. I didn't put this up here. Use the library. The library's for you too. Even if you walk in and you think, I'm not interested in this display. It doesn't seem like they have something for you. I guarantee they have something for you. Engage with the local government. These are oftentimes people who you go to church with, who you have grandchildren with, who you have children who are in classes, etc. Engage with those people. They're just people like us. Engage with the public. Attend any meetings that the library is being challenged on, where you can be supportive of them. Attend community meetings where you can be supportive of the library. Know your legislators. Legislators are people too, and they love their communities, even if they live in Washington, D.C. most of the time. When I go home, when I'm not from Washington, D.C., when I go to Washington, D.C., the people who I see, the representatives or their staff, they're so excited to see people from South Carolina and to hear about what's happening in your communities. They just can't wait to hear about what's happening in South Carolina. Invite them to your events. They really want to come to your events. And use social media, whatever social media you are using or not using. Try to, if you're not using social media, try to find one that you like and that you're comfortable using, and then use it and help your library by promoting them. Promote. I don't really like Twitter. I should use Twitter more. I'm not a big Twitter user, admittedly. I'm of the generation, I think I'm still using Facebook probably more than younger generations, but it's a great, easy way to get information out. There's Facebook, just a couple, we'll just go through a couple. Twitter, Instagram. What else? TikTok, but we're not, yeah. Some of our libraries are using TikTok. But we can't at the state level because the governor's out. Love it.
LinkedIn also.
Yeah, there's LinkedIn. Who said that?
I did.
Thank you. Thank you so much in the back. LinkedIn. I'm trying to engage in LinkedIn more because LinkedIn is a great, LinkedIn used to be where, if you're looking for a job, if you don't know, like LinkedIn is where you put up your information and people can recruit you and sort of source applications based on the information that you put up there. And it's now a great employer tool as well. Just put this in your hat too, so when you're talking to your public library directors, you can mention this as well, just as information. They may already be using it, but as you're just trying to engage in different ways with your library and your community, it is an excellent way for employers to recruit. I can't tell you the number of people who came to an interview with me and said, "Oh, I looked at you on LinkedIn," and I'm like, "Oh gosh, what is this? I need to look at LinkedIn and see what." Yeah, yes. Fortunately, I have a great executive assistant, and it was good. So, but I'm putting more things out now, and our library is putting more things out now because people, we're really competing for staffing, and we really are competing for employees, and we have to do all kinds of things to draw people to libraries, and so help us use any social media that we can to draw people to the library. And LinkedIn is a great way to show your culture and to show what fun things are happening at the library. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Twitter's great if you're having like in the moment things that are happening. My husband was a sports reporter. I always think about Twitter as now he's a communications director at DHEC. Different job completely, but I always think about Twitter as like the hearing of the sports, like what's happening in the innings and what's the next play. It's not really that way, but you can use it if you think about it in that way. We had a big read-in event last week with 2,000 kids who came to the State House. We had 6 different elected officials come out. Twitter's great for saying Representative Shannon Erickson is now visiting with the children. Senator Mike Fanning is on the steps with the kids. That's a great way to use Twitter. Instagram's mostly photos. What else? Anything else? Use social media. Get comfortable with something. The library can help you get comfortable, by the way. If you're not comfortable with technology, the library can help you do that. Because they're amazing. All right, let's see if there's anything else here. No. What's SCLA, South Carolina Library Association's role? Support, educate, engage, and advocate. SCLA is being revitalized, I would say. right now, and so that's very exciting for me to see, having been at the state library for about 16 years. It's really exciting to see them engage in a different way. They're restructuring that organization. If you're a librarian in the room, please be in SCLA. Please be active in SCLA. They need you very much. SCLA is doing a great job of this year, during this session is really the first time they've started to do this more, in engaging in the legislative process and engaging in communicating what's happening legislatively, which is very helpful for my office, I'll tell you, and it's good for us to get that information out as quickly as we can and as many channels as we can. They have a focus on South Carolina libraries, of course, and they advocate. This is a picture of Shannon Erickson, and this is from that event I mentioned last week, and this is her on the house floor. And then this, does anybody know who this is over here? Can you see it?
Oh, Miss America, Miss South Carolina.
It's Miss America, who was Miss South Carolina. Yes. Her name is Morgan Romano. Morgan Romano is a chemical engineer. She is something, and she's kind, and she has STEM kits, and she wants to partner with libraries. This is Morgan at my event last week, and she had the time of her life. We didn't know if she was going to leave. We were like, okay, well, we're just going to clean up now. She's like, all right, can I help do that? Like, she loves libraries, so she really was fantastic. We were like, you don't really have to, but she's wonderful. So figure out who in your community also, this goes back to a role of friends. Don't be afraid to ask people. Morgan came just because my executive assistant literally reached out to her and said, hey, we'd like to have you come and speak at our read-in event. We see that you're interested in STEM kits for kids and kids. She was like, yes, I'd love to do that. She's Miss America, Miss USA, right there. And she's from South Carolina. It's wonderful. And she's brilliant. And the kids love her. She's a lot of fun. People love her. We're working with SCLA also, as I mentioned. And then, finally, what's our role? This can get a little tricky. That's why I started out the way I did. I tried to start out with my track record of funding, state funding. It's a strategy. It just is. We represent all libraries in South Carolina. We are also a state agency. Let me tell you what we do. We are the state's document depository, which means that we receive state documents from every single state agency in South Carolina. The Department of Archives receives their records, and we receive their documents. I usually lug around documents so that I can show the difference of a document. Let's pretend that DNR did this. This would be a DNR document. DOT, I usually carry this big red vinyl road map plan that we have that. We have every accountability report. We have every financial report that's published. You name it, we have it. That is a significant part of what the state library does. So I'm talking to you about public libraries today. It is a portion of what we do. State's document depository. We're also a federal documents depository. We also have our Talking Book Services patrons. Those are people who are blind or visually impaired. We are their public library. We also do library development, of course, for public libraries. We spend a lot of our efforts on that. We are very engaged in public libraries. We additionally do South Carolina related events, cultural events at the state library. We work on South Carolina authors and books that cover South Carolina. And gosh, I almost forgot Discus. We do K-12. We spend $3.5 million on K-12 every year. Resources for teachers, families. Have you heard about tutor.com? Tutor.com is a free resource for all South Carolina children. It's 24/7 available. These tutors have all been vetted. It's a pretty strict process, actually. But if a child is having difficulty in a subject or needs tutoring, they can go to tutor.com through the state library, and it's free. It's 24/7. We started that right at the beginning of the pandemic, and we had some limited hours because I didn't have as much money, and then the Department of Education got involved in it because it was the pandemic and gave me some more money, and so now it's open 24/7. So K-12, yes.
Website?
If you go to the state library website, you can find it there. Did I miss anything, Libby? Y'all know Libby was a consultant with the state library for a number of years, right? That's why I keep calling on Libby to make sure. Did I get it all? Anything, any questions for me? Oh, I'm sorry, I lost my, any other questions about the K-12?
You're good, keep going.
Okay, all right. I see Katie's moving, just her silent warning, wrap it up. Okay. Legislation, I mentioned that I'm involved in the state legislation, sometimes before anybody else even knows what's happening. National legislation, I've lots and lots and lots of legislation that we're working on nationally as well. We talked about funding. We also, I've got we're a small team, we're small but mighty. There are 43 of us doing all of that. And we focus on technology in public libraries in a way that had never been done before, in the infrastructure technology to make sure that libraries have what they need to be able to meet the broadband and internet access needs that they have for their communities. We do a lot, but I've also asked my communications team to promote on social media. So here are a couple of things that have been happening. There's more to do, and I guess I just really like that picture of her. The middle picture is a backpack project. Have you all heard about this? We partner with the parks, the state parks, and we get park passes for all of our public libraries. I think we have 500,000, no, we don't have 500,000, we have 500. We have 500 in circulation right now. We started with 50, I think 3 years ago, something before, something like that. And now we're at 500 circulating. And so what somebody can do is go to their, just in case you're not familiar, they can go to their public library, they can check out a backpack. In that backpack is binoculars, information about parks, information about wildlife, indigenous species of the area, and they go to the park for free that day. It's a great way to engage. And then the other picture to the right is Jennifer Jean, and she's on my staff, and she is just wonderful. This is a Read, Eat, Grow program. It's a seed program, and you probably have heard about seed programs happening in your library. So we're doing all kinds of stuff in public libraries, and we will continue to, but we also, this is my last point, I promise, Kitty. It can be a little tricky for the state library. You're probably not going to see me talking about either one of these books publicly unless somebody writes legislation that will impact public libraries across the state. It's not because I don't care, it's because these decisions are made at the local level. Our role is to educate public libraries on how to have a balanced collection. And then our next role, if this were to come up in some way, would be if someone were gonna write some legislation that said, we're not gonna fund a public library if they buy books that we don't agree with, then I would get engaged then. That's when the state library would get engaged. Otherwise, we are doing the things that we need to do, and we're able to pivot so that we can keep getting money for public libraries and keep building consensus about the library and support. Any questions for me? You can ask me anything, and really, Jonathan.
Leesa, I attended the read-in. I just want to congratulate you. That was extraordinary to see 2,000 kids on the steps of the State House celebrating a pro-literacy event. It was just incredible. And I'm convinced that Senator Mike Fanning shook hands or high-fived every single one.
He needs to win an award. I'm going to nominate him for something next year. I mean, he really is authentically like that.
Yeah.
He really is.
I brought a group of high school student advocates to talk about book bans and libraries at the event, and we spent probably 20 minutes with him. He needed to do other things, but he went out of his way to talk to us. And this is sort of my tangentially related question. Mm-hmm. The book bans and the book challenges are scaring teachers and school librarians out of the profession, and they're not coming back in. And sort of in response to that, kind of indirectly, the state gave a $5 million grant to Beaufort County to reinvigorate our teacher cadet program. specifically for Beaufort County, so we can grow our own teachers.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you're seeing the possibilities of legislation that would do the same thing for librarians as a profession in terms of public libraries. Because as you mentioned, there's a huge gap in the availability of librarians versus the need for librarians right now.
Yes, that is a great model in Beaufort. I'm happy about that, and I'm hoping that others will do the same. That is a good question about public libraries. I don't know that anything's going to happen at the state level, and sometimes, but let me tell you what we're doing. I guess when I say state level, I mean in the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
You have to really measure the political climate of the time, and it can shift quickly. And so, at the beginning of this session, for example, it would not have been the right time to ask for that money. We didn't ask for a state aid increase this time. We asked for money for the state library because we are a state agency. I have not asked for money for the state library in a number of years, and I need money because I need to hire staff too. And I need to digitize some things. So that's what we focused on. So you have to sort of weigh what's happening politically. At the beginning of the session, book bans were, you would have thought it was the only thing happening in the world, because it was just getting so much publicity, which oftentimes when something gets so much publicity, it tells you nothing else is happening. And so it's just like a slow news day, and that's what they're picking up. But at the state library, we do tuition reimbursement, and I think we spent $200,000 last year. And we are working on growing people in libraries into librarianship who are there. We try to make it easier for people to go to library school. So that's some of the ways we're doing it, but I'm just completely open to any ideas. I really am very open to that. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Thanks for asking me that. I love ideas. I think there are very few ideas that are born out of just one person's genius ability. Most of them come from, okay, let me put that there. That might work. Let me take that. All of us putting together is what really makes a difference. So if you have any ideas, I'm open to them. What other questions do you have for me?
Leesa, would you speak real fast about the resources you have about grant writing at the state library? And if any friends groups were interested in applying for a grant, some of the support that they can find at the state library.
Yes, I have the best grant writing person on staff. Hands down, Dawn. Yeah, Dawn Mullen. If Dawn ever tries to leave, we'll have to chase her down. Dawn teaches a class on grants, and Dawn is a fantastic librarian, an amazing librarian. We talk about Dawn at my office. If we can't find something, we're like, Dawn will know. Dawn will know. Dawn knows where everything is, whether it's online, in physical form, whatever. But we offer grant writing classes. We like to help write grants. Dawn teaches those classes, but then if you need individual help, we will individually sit down with you too and go through, here are some maybe places for you to look for a grant for what you're specifically focused on. And then we'll also look at your grant for you. We do that for public libraries too, because we want public libraries, obviously. We try to make our grant process easy, and just to come back to public libraries for a second. And as a training opportunity, because we know that public libraries are short-staffed, and I think I know of one library in South Carolina that has a professional grant writing department, rather. But for most it's new, and it might be new for you, that's okay. We're used to working with people who it's something new that you're working on. We're happy to do that. We want to help with that so that you can get money. Yeah, does that cover it all? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, anything else for me? You can ask me anything, we really can. I can pivot.